All right, so the last video in regards to the unit circle, to continue with problems similar to the ones we just did, remember that this first coordinate for all of these values on the unit circle is always going to be the cosine of the angle, and the second value, the y coordinate, is going to be the sine of an angle. So you're going to see questions like this. You're going to be asked, what is the sine of pi over 4? So in order to do this problem, you just have to find pi over 4 on the unit circle. Pi over 4 is right here. It's a 45-degree angle. Both the sine and the cosine of 45 are the same. I specifically asked for the sine, and so that's the y coordinate, and it's root 2 over 2. Okay. Another one they might ask you for is, what is the cosine of 5 pi over 3? So all we have to do is find 5 pi over 3 on your unit circle. That's down here. That's a reference angle of 60 degrees. But you can just look right here at these values. First, the x-coordinate is the cosine, and the y-coordinate is the sine. And I asked for the, ready forget, cosine. So the cosine of 5 pi over 3 is right here, positive 1/2. And finally, the last thing that you might be asked for is the tangent of an angle. Now, the tangent is always the opposite over the adjacent, so you could do things that way. Or you can also know that one of the trig identities is that the tangent of an angle is always the sine value divided by the cosine value. So in our case, this is always going to be the y value divided by the x value. So let's take a look at the tangent of 60 degrees. If you look for 60 degrees on your unit circle, it's right here. The sine is the y value, so the y value is root 3 over 2. And I divide that by the cosine, right? This is the sine. And I'm dividing by the cosine, which is the x-coordinate of 60 degrees, which is 1/2. And if you reduce that down, basically those 2's disappear. But you can kind of think to yourself, you're doing root 3 over 2, and you're dividing by 1/2, which is multiplying by the reciprocal. And so the 2's cancel. So what you find out is that the tangent of 60 degrees is just root 3. These 2's cancel, and you get root 3. Now don't be tricked by the values that don't have root 3 over 2 and root 2 over 2 in them, right? There's a lot of values that are referenced as 90 degrees. And even though these are a little bit easier, for some reason, they stump a few people. So take a look at these values. I could ask you, if I was referencing those 90-degree angles, I could ask you, what is the tangent of 270 degrees? So remember, the tangent is always going to be the sine over the cosine. And even though they're not these fancy radical numbers, the first one is the cosine, and the second one, the y value, is the sine. So the sine is -1, the cosine is 0, so the tangent of 270 degrees is -1 over 0. Now, we all know that when you divide by 0, you're not allowed to do that, right? That is undefined. So the tangent of 270 degrees is undefined. They're not always undefined, though. For instance, if I were to ask you, what is the tangent of pi? The tangent of pi is over here. The coordinates are -1, 0. The sign goes in the numerator. The sign is 0, because that's the y value, right? The sign is the y. The cosine is the x value. That goes in the denominator, the sine of the cosine, and that's -1. And 0 divided by -1, that's okay. That's just 0. So the tangent of pi is 0.